For years, Thailand occupied a special place in the minds of travelers because it offered a combination that felt increasingly difficult to find elsewhere, blending beautiful scenery, fascinating culture, welcoming hospitality, excellent food, and affordable travel into a single destination that seemed capable of appealing to almost everyone. Millions of visitors arrived expecting tropical beaches, vibrant cities, unforgettable street food, and experiences that felt dramatically different from life back home, and for a long time Thailand consistently delivered exactly that. Even people who had never visited often carried a very specific image of the country in their minds, shaped by travel documentaries, guidebooks, recommendations from friends, and countless stories shared by previous generations of travelers. That is why so many returning visitors are now arriving and quietly saying the same thing to one another: Thailand has changed, and travelers are starting to notice. The interesting part is that many people struggle to explain exactly what feels different because the country still contains many of the things that made it famous in the first place. The beaches have not disappeared, the temples still attract visitors from around the world, the food remains one of the biggest draws in global tourism, and the sense of adventure that attracts travelers continues to exist throughout much of the country. Yet despite all of those familiar elements remaining in place, a growing number of visitors feel that the overall experience is no longer quite the same as they remember. What they are noticing is not one dramatic change but rather the accumulation of many smaller changes that have gradually reshaped the travel experience over time. Many returning travelers first notice the difference before they even reach their hotel because airports, transportation systems, and tourism infrastructure now operate at a scale that would have been difficult to imagine a generation ago. Areas that once felt primarily geared toward backpackers and independent travelers now welcome visitors from every corner of the world, representing a far wider range of ages, budgets, and travel styles than ever before. The growth has brought convenience, accessibility, and comfort to millions of people who may never have considered visiting Thailand in the past. At the same time, that growth has inevitably changed the atmosphere of some destinations that built their reputations during a very different era of tourism. One of the biggest shifts involves the way people discover and experience destinations today compared with how they traveled in the past. Travelers once relied heavily on guidebooks, local recommendations, and spontaneous exploration to shape their journeys, often arriving with only a rough idea of what they wanted to see. Today, many visitors land with highly detailed itineraries built around locations they have already seen hundreds of times on social media, travel channels, and online travel guides. As a result, large numbers of people frequently find themselves heading toward the same attractions, viewpoints, cafes, beaches, and landmarks at exactly the same time. This concentration of attention has created an interesting effect because certain parts of Thailand now receive enormous visibility while other equally fascinating destinations remain largely overlooked by international travelers. A visitor may spend an entire trip moving between famous hotspots and conclude that the country feels crowded, commercialized, or dramatically changed from what they expected. Another traveler may spend the same amount of time exploring different regions and return home describing an experience that feels relaxed, authentic, and surprisingly untouched by mass tourism. Both travelers can be completely correct because they are experiencing different versions of modern Thailand. The first major shift in perspective often occurs when travelers realize that Thailand itself may not have changed as much as the way tourism now flows through the country. Social media algorithms, travel trends, and online recommendations tend to funnel millions of people toward a relatively small number of highly visible locations. Once a destination becomes popular online, its popularity often attracts even more attention, creating a cycle that becomes increasingly difficult to reverse. The result is that some areas experience extraordinary growth while others continue operating at a much slower pace despite offering many of the same attractions. Pricing is another area where many returning visitors notice significant differences compared with earlier trips. Thailand still offers excellent value compared with many Western countries, but the days when every destination felt unbelievably inexpensive are becoming harder to find in some of the country's most popular tourism zones. Increased demand, rising operating costs, infrastructure investment, and the evolution of tourism itself have gradually pushed prices higher in many areas. Travelers who have not visited for several years are often surprised to discover that some parts of Thailand now feel considerably more expensive than they remember. This does not necessarily mean Thailand has become an expensive destination by international standards, because many visitors still consider it highly affordable compared with alternatives elsewhere in the world. What has changed is the expectation gap between what people anticipate and what they actually encounter after arriving. Travelers often compare current prices not with other destinations but with memories of previous trips or stories told by travelers who visited decades earlier. When reality fails to match those expectations, the difference becomes particularly noticeable. Another change involves the type of traveler choosing Thailand today, because the visitor profile has become far more diverse than it was in previous generations. Traditional backpackers remain an important part of the tourism landscape, but they now share destinations with luxury travelers, digital nomads, long-term visitors, remote workers, wellness tourists, and travelers seeking entirely different experiences. This diversity has encouraged businesses to adapt and expand their offerings to serve a much wider audience. The result is a tourism industry that often feels more sophisticated, more international, and more varied than ever before. For some visitors, these developments represent clear improvements because they create greater comfort, convenience, and flexibility during a trip. Travelers can choose from a wider range of accommodation, dining options, transportation services, and travel experiences than previous generations could have imagined. Digital connectivity makes planning easier, online reviews reduce uncertainty, and modern infrastructure helps visitors navigate the country more efficiently. From this perspective, many changes appear overwhelmingly positive. The second major shift occurs when travelers realize that nostalgia often shapes perceptions as strongly as reality. Many people compare present-day Thailand not only with previous trips but also with the emotions they experienced during those earlier journeys. The excitement of discovering a new destination for the first time is difficult to recreate no matter how little a place changes over the years. As a result, some travelers are not only comparing destinations across time but also comparing different stages of their own lives. This realization can completely change the way people interpret the changes they see around them. A destination that once felt adventurous may now feel familiar simply because the traveler has gained experience and confidence over time. Streets that once seemed mysterious may now appear predictable because they have been visited before. In many cases, part of the change people are noticing exists within themselves as much as within the destination. At the same time, it would be inaccurate to suggest that Thailand has remained unchanged because development has undeniably transformed parts of the country. New transportation projects, expanding cities, upgraded tourism facilities, and changing local economies have reshaped many destinations in visible ways. Areas that once catered primarily to a narrow segment of travelers now support millions of visitors annually. Growth on that scale inevitably leaves a lasting impact. What makes Thailand particularly fascinating is that it continues evolving while simultaneously preserving many of the qualities that made it famous. Travelers can still discover extraordinary food, remarkable hospitality, stunning landscapes, vibrant markets, and memorable cultural experiences across the country. The difference is that finding the version of Thailand that matches a visitor's expectations may now require a little more research and flexibility than it once did. Popular destinations often reveal only one part of a much larger story. Many experienced travelers eventually conclude that Thailand has not become better or worse so much as different. The country has adapted to changing travel habits, technological developments, global tourism trends, and the expectations of modern visitors. Some travelers appreciate these changes because they create a smoother and more accessible experience. Others miss aspects of the country that felt less developed, less connected, and more unpredictable. The third major shift comes when travelers stop asking whether Thailand has changed and begin asking what type of experience they are actually seeking from the country today. That question often produces much more useful answers because it shifts attention away from broad generalizations and toward individual priorities. Some visitors are looking for convenience, nightlife, and modern amenities, while others seek culture, nature, and slower travel experiences. Thailand remains capable of delivering all of these experiences, but not always in the same places. This helps explain why opinions about Thailand often seem so divided despite being based on genuine experiences. One traveler may focus on crowded tourism districts, rising prices, and increasing commercialization, while another discovers quiet beaches, welcoming communities, and extraordinary value only a short distance away. Both experiences can coexist because Thailand is not a single destination but a collection of countless destinations connected by a shared national identity. Understanding this complexity often leads to a more balanced view of how the country has evolved. Despite all the changes, Thailand continues attracting millions of visitors every year because it still offers a remarkable combination of accessibility, variety, culture, scenery, and hospitality that remains difficult to replicate elsewhere. Travelers can explore bustling cities, tropical islands, mountain regions, historic sites, and vibrant food scenes within a single trip while experiencing dramatically different environments along the way. Few countries provide such a wide range of experiences while remaining accessible to such a broad spectrum of travelers. That fundamental appeal remains one of Thailand's greatest strengths. That is why travelers are starting to notice that Thailand has changed. Growth, modernization, shifting tourism patterns, changing expectations, and evolving travel habits have all contributed to a destination that feels different from the one many people remember or imagine before arrival. Yet the story is not simply about what has been lost or gained, because Thailand continues reinventing itself while preserving many of the qualities that made it one of the world's most beloved destinations in the first place. The real challenge for modern travelers is not deciding whether Thailand has changed, but deciding which version of Thailand they want to discover for themselves. And for a growing number of travelers exploring Southeast Asia today, that question is increasingly leading them toward another destination that many believe is experiencing the same transformation Thailand went through years ago, but from a very different starting point.